Steve Berlin, welcome to noise11.com. It's a pleasure to have you here. You are a true legend, Steve.
Oh my goodness. Well, it depends on who you ask, I guess.
Well, I could ask Bob Dylan, I could ask Paul Kelly, I could ask Paul Simon. I think they'd all agree with me.
I'm not sure if Paul will, or Paul Simon will.
oh, really? Was there a bit of a run in there?
We didn't part friends. We don't check in on each other very much.
So there's no Simon and Berlin album on the way.
No, that one you may have to wait a while.
Okay, all right. Okay, well, we'll establish that you are not replacing Art Garfunkel.
No, I am not.
Yes, but you have worked with Paul Kelly.
I forget the name of the record now, but yeah, it was a moment there in the, what would that have been, early 90s, I guess? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there we go. For those who don't know the record, there it is.
Scott Litt was the producer, and he was a good friend of mine, and he would... it was quite a run that he had. There was a lot. There was Paul's record, The Replacements, All Shook Down, REM, Finest Work Song, Zachary Richard. I think there's something else too that for whatever reason he stuck me on everything that he did, and they were all really cool records. That one I remember quite well. It was really had a blast doing that one.
That's right. You were the sax player on Paul Kelly's, the song that became a hit song in Australia, "Sweet Guy."
Nice. And he's still going. I saw something he did recently, right? He's still making great records.
Well, let's talk about Native Sons, because that's the new Los Lobos album, and what a joy this was to put on at the start and play all the way through to the end. You're paying tribute to the artists, the people, the lifestyle of Los Angeles, and there's one original song in here. But how did you go about choosing the individual songs, all of the different covers that you have on here?
Well, everybody got to pick one that was that nobody else could say no to. So that's 4 or 5 actually, and then there were four automatic choices that would have been the Blasters, the Midnighters, War, and a fellow named Lalo Guerrero, who all 4 of those people were just fully instrumental in our development and our worldview, and there, without any of those 4, there would not be us. I probably wouldn't be talking to you. We'd probably be playing at the corner bar for tips. So those guys were just all super influential and powerful, and just sort of, like I said, instrumental in our development. And then I guess everything else would have been stuff that people wanted to do, or songs that we thought would fit, that would make the record more interesting, and or in some cases, like highlight another facet of Los Angeles music, because that was, the main idea was basically to say thank you to this kind of crazy city that we started in, and that the guys were all born in, everybody except myself. And so many other cities, at least in the States, they sort of have an iconic sound that is identified with them, like Chicago blues, or I grew up in Philadelphia, so like kind of Philly soul was a thing. And LA, for since there was recorded music, has always been somewhat of a hard to pin down. There's always so much different stuff, and being the more or less the center of the entertainment industry, people come from all over the world to make it in LA. So it doesn't really have a sound. So we were like, our mission more or less was to try and figure out how we could spotlight all of these little sort of micro scenes, if you will, and make something that sounded like it all held together, which, I think we pulled off. I'd like to think we pulled off. It was fun trying if we did.
So what was your song of choice on this record then?
I brought the Percy Mayfield song, Never No More. So he was an artist, mostly a songwriter. He co-wrote or wrote a bunch of Ray Charles hits early on. And he lived in South Central Los Angeles and was part of, there was a scene down there that came to be known as the Central Avenue scene in the late 50s, early 60s. And it's, largely, I wouldn't say unknown, but underappreciated. A lot of really, remarkable artists came out of that scene. Lowell Folsom, Jimmy Witherspoon, Percy Mayfield was part of that. It was just like a really interesting, as the sort of like the post World War II, R&B scene was developing. There was a giant part of it happened in LA that I don't think ever really got enough credit. So that's where that one came from.
Some interesting choices on here, and in listening to this and discovering Farmer John was a Premier song. I'm Australian. I knew that as a Neil Young song on one of his records. So I was rather surprised to find that that was even earlier than that. But like you've got if I can connect Neil Young, then with Farmer John, we jump to Buffalo Springfield, Stephen Stills, and a couple of songs from Stephen Stills. So there's a bit of a crossover there with the Buffalo Springfield Neil Young era.
Hugely influential. Buffalo Springfield was really big part of the guys' early development. Like before they even started playing rock music, they got to see Buffalo Springfield a few times at the Whiskey A Go Go. The songwriters in that band, like Neil Young, Steve Stills, just Richie Valenz, just really, really, really amazing. How the reach and the penetration of all those guys and their songwriting. So that was again, like we kind of wanted, we sort of wanted to tell a story, like how we became us. And that was a big part of it. I don't think people really understand how important Buffalo Springfield was to our songwriting, at least.
It's interesting, isn't it, with Buffalo Springfield, because it's not enough to just cover the words and the sound of a Buffalo Springfield song. You've got these dueling guitars in there between Young and Stills. That I guess to authenticate what you want to do, you really have to also acknowledge that and perform that, which you've done on this record.
Yeah, that's why we couldn't pick which song we wanted to do, so we did both. We just connected them. The sound of those records too. I would say that Bluebird, like everything else, we wanted to put our spin on. We wanted to do our own take on those songs, but Bluebird, we actually wanted to try and capture the vibe and the sound. So we tried to get that strange guitar sound, and the drums have kind of a unique sound on that record as well. So that's the only one where we said, well, let's just see how close we can get.
Well, that whole Buffalo Springfield thing was happening, that whole Laurel Canyon thing in Los Angeles, California. There was so much all going on there at the same time. And another one of those musical moments was Jackson Browne. An interesting choice on here, Jamaica Say You Will, is the song that Los Lobos cover on here. And that was also very successfully covered by Joe Cocker at one point.
Really? I did not know Joe covered that one. That's interesting. I did not find that one. I think that was Jackson Browne's first record. I remember where I grew up in Philadelphia, hearing it the first time and just thinking, like, where the hell did this guy come from? Then to find out he wrote it all when he was like 20 years old, just kind of, I still can't quite believe that you could write songs that incredible without having, lived 100 years, but, just sort of a testament to how great Jackson is and was. And that was one that Louie, our lyricist, brought in, just because I think Jackson's lyric style was really, really influential on Louie, like how to basically tell a much bigger story with the absolute minimum amount of verbiage.
The Beach Boys choice, I thought, was just magic, because a lot of Beach Boys fans cite the 60s songs, all the surf songs of the 60s, and then there's another group of Beach Boys fans that sort of hover the band around Kokomo. Sail on Sailor is one of those songs that was in the middle of all of that, but it doesn't quite get the attention that the end of the Beach Boys and the start of the Beach Boys got.
Right. Yeah. It was the Holland record, which was, some people really, some people, that's their favorite. Pet Sounds obviously was huge, but that one came from Conrad, our bass player, our resident Beach Boys fanatic, and it was that was a bit of a reach for us. It took a while to sort of figure that one out. I would say of all of the songs on the record, that was the one that we actually had to do a little research on, and we couldn't quite get it to feel quite right. And then we hired this keyboardist, a guy named Phil Parlapiano, who had played with Rod Stewart, and he's a pro's pro, and he kind of showed us a lot of it has to do with like in music, it's the voicing of the chords, like how the chords You can actually read the sheet music and it'll just say like A minor, D minor, whatever. But a lot of the magic of that specific song is in the voicing of the chords, like how they would actually play the chords, how the instruments all played the various chords. And that once he showed up and kind of opened that door for us, then it really sort of, then it was like, oh God, yeah, there it is. That's what we tried to do. But yeah, that was a challenge, that one. They would definitely, I would say of all of them, that was the one that probably, kind of foiled us for a while until we figured the chord thing out.
The centerpiece of the album, the title track, Native Son, quite literally is a centerpiece, isn't it? Comes at track 7 on a 13 album set. Yeah. That's the original song that ties all of this together.
Well, that's sort of I guess now a thing that more or less happens it's happened on the last 4 or 5 records where, we start a record, we start a project, and we don't really have a specific destination. We don't really know where it's going. We have hopes, obviously, and we'd like to think that, we're in some kind of control, but, a lot of times the songs just kind of show up. And even on a covers record, right at, like towards the end of it, it was Louie who had the idea for an original song. And, he was like, well, do you think it would fit? And we're like, yeah, man, just try it. Let's see. Let's, see what it sounds like. And, going back to Good Morning Aslan, our record from, what was that be, like the late 90s, it's sort of like a song always shows up at the end of the process that kind of puts the whole rest of the thing in perspective. So Good Morning Aslan, Kids of Gold, on the Christmas record that we did in 2019, it was Christmas and You. Just, no matter what the project is, it's just funny how our collective muse sort of says, well, here's this one other thing that you hadn't considered yet that needs to live in the world. So it's kind of interesting. We don't fight it. When we get ideas like that, we just kind of let them happen.
It's great hearing a covers album from a band like Los Lobos, and considering that the best known song outside of the United States for this band was a cover, La Bomba. Right. Has that been a positive or a negative in moving forward that you got known for somebody else's song?
Oh, it's absolutely a positive. I mean, there's nothing negative about having a worldwide #1 record. That would be really sour grapes as far as I'm concerned. No, it was all good. I mean, the only thing that you could say was an issue, not that it was really an issue, was that people might have misunderstood what we were about. Like, someone might have heard that song and thought that that's what, our music was all about. But, we kind of went out of our way to sort of indicate that, that was something that we got hired to do effectively, that, we had a very different sort of career in mind and a very different sort of musical approach than what we did on that movie. But no, it was all amazing. Like, we got to live life for a minute as a #1 artist. We, no matter where we go, almost everybody in the world's heard of that song in that movie. So sort of a shorthand for a lot of introductions for us. And, it was, I think, interestingly, it came about, when we were working on it, we had no idea it was going to be a hit anything. I mean, it was probably the last thing in our minds that we were crafting something that was going to, go that far. It was, first time movie director in a movie with no stars about a kid who wrote 18 songs in his whole life and died tragically. I mean, it's not really exactly a recipe for worldwide success if you think about it. But, it's just like the magic of music and the magic of a story well told. People really responded to it.
Yeah, I think my favourite Richie Valenz story, like mentioning that he only had written about 18 songs. One of those songs was ripped off by Led Zeppelin, wasn't it? Boogie with Stew. They had My Head. Well, My Head was the Richie Valenz. Sort of. They did Boogie with Stew and had to credit Mrs. Valenz on later releases.
Good. Well, I'm glad that happened. They Zeppelin has a history of covering, quote unquote, like borrowing people's songs without giving them credit. So glad that happened.
Your first album with the band, How Will the Wolves Survive, with T-Bone Burnett. Was T-Bone Burnett wasn't that well known at that point, was he?
No. Both he and I, we did the first 2 records together. I think we were both kind of just starting our producing careers. I think he had done just 1 or 2 records, and more or less same as I had at that point. We were brand new. Yeah, it was. We're learning as we go. I mean, I think back then the stakes didn't seem very high. We're on an independent record label based in Los Angeles, basically making records for our friends, and the people at the label were more or less our drinking buddies. So, it wasn't like we were concerned about anything. To be perfectly honest, we were just trying to entertain ourselves and not overspend and make something that sounded like something we'd like to hear.
A couple of years later, you were opening for Bob Dylan. That must have been an amazing experience as well.
That was really amazing. His bass player, actually his whole band, but back then his bass player was a good friend of mine, and so I reached out to him and asked, what should we do? Like, what do I need to know? Like, what's, so sort of like meeting the king, like, what's the protocol? Do we curtsy and bow? And, he said, look, man, just, you never know on any given day, you're going to get a completely different guy. So our first show, we show up and he was very, he was taking pictures, kissing babies. He was like, wow, what all these stories about him being a curmudgeon? Like, he's a sweet guy. And then sure enough, the next night he's wearing a black hoodie, like completely pulled over his face, wouldn't talk to anybody, wouldn't look at anybody. It's like, hey, that's Bob. That's, they only made one of him, man. He could do whatever the hell he wants to do, as far as I'm concerned. He could be as weird as he wants to be. It's he's earned that right.
It's interesting that you talk about him like that, because you were involved with the movie I'm Not There, which portrays Bob, with a whole lot of different characters, one being an Australian and a female, Kate Blanchett.
Right. Yeah, I think it was interesting to try and capture Bob by having different people play him. I know people that know him. I can't say that I know him, and he remains an enigma to everybody around him. It's amazing to have lived a life like that and to still be a complete mystery to even close friends. It's kind of cool, really. I'm sure it's harder work than it looks to pull that off, but he does.
Well, it's great to talk to you and hear this amazing story, Steve. You've had quite the history, and I will make sure that when I bump into Paul Kelly next, I'll send your regards to him.
Please do. Yes, please do. And tell him I really appreciate the work he's doing. I think it's great stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us here today at Noise 11.
Thanks, man.